Welcome in for the third edition of Drawing a Crowd, the Business of Sports Tourism podcast presented by the Maryland Sports Commission and Pressbox Sports, featuring Executive Director of Maryland Sports Commission, Terry Hasseltine. I'm your host, Stan the Fan, Charles. And Terry, it's been a while since we've chatted. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding, and I'm really excited about today's conversation because it's really at the core of who we are and why we got this whole sports commission up and running in the state of Maryland.
Well, the Sports Commission, I remember when you got here in 2008, I believe it was, it seemed like you were a one-man wrecking crew, so to speak, or a one-man band. You had to create a lot of what was going to happen. And one of the things you created along the way was a nonprofit called Team Maryland. We're here today to talk a little bit about the importance of it. Why don't you tell us what it is, and then we can find out why it's important.
So when I first got here, I knew the responsibility was I had to be east and west and north and south across the state. And as you alluded to, as a one-man band, I needed to create bandwidth. And so similar to what I did in my previous life in other states, I created a thing called, in this case, Team Maryland,
right,
which is a consortium and a collaboration of like-minded people in the sports tourism space who we could work in collaboration on various projects, initiatives, and efforts so that we could raise the entire state of Maryland through sports tourism together and collectively. So hence the word team. Together, everyone achieves more. So that was the basic concept of it. And then we built it from the ground up with DMOs across the state, destination marketing organizations across the state, who identified with sports as a key driver to economic outcomes for their communities.
So this is the people that became Team Maryland. They've got skin in this game, so to speak, in that they wanted to increase the bandwidth of sports attracting tourism, correct?
Yeah, they saw that, sports tourism, was on the rise. They saw the impact that the events that they were already having were having on their communities, but knew that they had to elevate their game. They knew that they had to take one step to get it just beyond the cusp of just being good to becoming great. So through this process and this connectivity of all these partners, we were able to take events that were struggling to be, 25, 30 teams, helping in some cases, some events go from 200 teams to 700 teams, or taking a tournament from 10 teams to 50 teams, and making sure that there was more visitation happening through sports.
So those events, they had some of the same problems that you had in bandwidth, and it was your leadership that kind of increase the bandwidth that each organization brought to Team Maryland.
Yeah, basically look at it as a football team, a basketball team, or whatever sport team. I came in, became a coach, and was starting to work through the assets on the team to figure out how we could have the better outcomes so that when it came to Final Four championship time, we were ready to stand there and win the opportunity. And so that's what we had to. We had to create a culture of can-do. We had to create a culture of, if we are mindful and we pursue the right activities and the right opportunities, Maryland can stand its own. The recent impact study that just came out by Sports ETA in 2023 put a top 10 list out of who's doing it. But if you look at it, per capita in the United States, Maryland is going toe-to-toe with a lot of these bigger states. We just don't have the population base and or the landmass space that a lot of these other places do. But we do have very unique opportunities like the Bay, like the ocean, like the mountain, and
like
an urban center in Fair Hill. So we have all of these assets. We now had to put them into play. And so through Team Maryland and through our partnerships across the state, we are now identifying opportunities. Instead of letting it turn away and go north or go south to one of those larger states, we kept it here at home. And now we're the envy of them because we're doing all this stuff, but we're doing it as a collective unit. There's no shame about crossing county lines in Maryland.
Not at
we
all.
have to.
Right.
The size warrants it. So we're doing a lot of things where we're packaging multiple communities together and multiple jurisdictions together in order to win opportunities.
So before we dig in some detail about Team Maryland, what they do, the initiatives they work on, I want to ask you, when you took the job here, did you envision that you would create something like Team Maryland? It was only a matter of time, like 6 months or a year down the road, or 2 years down the road?
Well, funny story. So when I was hired here, there was a gentleman by the name of Jack Swarbrook, who was the chairman of the Indiana Sport Corp,
right,
who had just come to town and did a presentation to some leadership, and the like here in Maryland, which started the whole process of looking for someone like myself to run it. His last words when he left the room from that group, which I learned after the fact, was go find the kid from Kentucky and you'll be good. And I had created Team Kentucky there and helped grow that relationship. So, yes, coming here, it was known that I was going to want to tackle some type of team aspect of how we approach the sport tourism market.
Did you, because you were hired by Governor O'Malley,
correct,
did you have to pitch him and make a presentation of the idea, or some people from the Department of State Economics or something, or did you have the authority, to just do it?
I pitched the concept during my interview process when they were courting me for this opportunity, and I pitched the concept and the like. And then once I was hired and brought on to be tasked to be the head of sports for the state, it was the expectation that, I had a leash, but my leash was going to be very, very long in order to develop the products that we needed at the state in order to be successful and compete for sport tourism business here. And so the leash, like I said, stayed long. And because of the partnerships and because of the teams that we're building across the entire state. So until recently, I have not had a choke collar on or whatever, and I don't think one's coming.
You mentioned that these people, these organizations that you work with that became Team Maryland, all had sort of skin in the game of wanting to increase marketing and tourism dollars that come into their areas. Does it cost them anything monetarily to be part of Team Maryland, or is it just their time and they needed the organizational vision that came from you?
Well, it's a loaded question because it started off where it was an a la carte menu of services and things like that to be a part of, and you could buy in at a certain level. So where it currently stands right now, and we have the full state now as a part of Team Maryland. So we're no longer missing a county or two or whatever. So the base cost of being a part of Team Maryland from our DMO partners is $2,500 annually.
Okay.
So what do you get for $2,500, you might ask? You get membership to our national organization, which is Sports ETA. You get access to, obviously, our staff, our time, and our energy. We have 2 private sector consultants on our team who are industry leaders and industry experts that they can work with and also be a part of. They also get a platform called Play Easy, which is our database system that collects all the inventory of all of our venues, all the assets these venues have, so that they can use that as a marketing tool on their platforms. So for $2,500, they're getting about $65,000 to $70,000 worth of net value for a $2,500 investment. Now, if you were doing that in your home, you'd probably invest in it too.
Yep.
So that was the thing. And then we had the implementation of the Michael Aaron Bush Fund come into the equation, and then the Major Events Fund.
Before, yeah.
So because of those opportunities and because of the growth of the resources that we were able to bring to the table, a minor investment shows, 1, they're committed. 2, part of the process, they had to be engaged in the national industry. So that's Sports ETA. Then they had to make sure that they were staying up top and dedicated to making sure their venue inventory was solid, robust, so that when they can't be present at a conference or a trade show, or when they can't be present at an opportunity that might be local, we can then do the research on our own to help rise that boat up so they might still be involved with an opportunity. But because they weren't present, doesn't mean they weren't present. It means we were there to represent them.
Gotcha. Give me an idea of that $2,500. It was times how many partners are there in Team Maryland?
There's now 24.
Okay.
So like I said, all counties and all taxable jurisdictions. So you have all the counties, City of Baltimore, Ocean City, and National Harbor.
And that money that you raised from them, that was prior to the Bush fund coming in to help. So it gave you a little bit of a nut, an egg basket to deal with.
Well, it allowed us to, because we built into the Michael Aaron Bush Fund the ability to continue to market and promote, Maryland after we get beyond the initial investment into the, granting out for the events. And so that allows us to say they're committed, they're invested in the program. So when we're making investments back to the Michael Aaron Bush Fund or the Major Events Fund, we're making people who have already invested in the marketplace and not just coming to use it because they see $1 available. They know that they're already working the market. They already know that they're a part of our environment and a part of our partnership. And therefore, there's a collaboration right from the get-go. They're committed, and when we bring in the grant dollars, we're committed, and therefore, we're working on the same tracks and the same train and the same playbook.
I want to run by some bullet points, okay, about what Team Maryland does, and I'll say them, and then you just sort of shoot what's on your mind. The recruitment of new events for Maryland.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, bringing new business, driving new business to the state of Maryland is a priority. However, making sure we're retaining that business over time, because the last thing you want to do is put $1 out on an activity and it's a one-year hit and then it goes away.
Right.
You're hoping you're building a legacy and growing a strategy that allows you to build a portfolio so you can start to count on that business year in and year out. So then you can start redirecting your energy to help bring some net new stuff in. But you can't, like I said, there's opportunities out there that are one-time, very visible, very great opportunities that you have to pursue.
Right.
But for the most part, we're trying to find those things that have retention value.
Right. Like Fair Hills and the Bike Classic.
Yep,
okay.
Exactly.
All right. Do you get an idea that those things have legs beyond 1 year in the early discussions with an event that you can say this is a one-off?
Oh, yeah. It's going to come down to, various profile events, i.e. when you're bidding on an NCAA championship or you're building on an NBA All-Star, any of those profile events, you're working on those events because they bring that one-time really good uptick in economic vitality. They also understand that there's good media value and good, visible exposure with those opportunities. Creates quality of life because now people are being exposed to high-profile opportunities you might not see otherwise. But when we talk about most of the events, it's about we're getting into camp with you on these efforts because we want to see you make us part of a rotation, or we want to see you become an annual event in our portfolio, or we see the growth of a sport that's about to hit the market hot, and we want to be at the forefront of getting ahead of it, i.e. a pickleball, i.e. cricket, i.e. sports like that. Now with the Olympics in 2028, all the sports that have been added, we're trying to make sure we're on top of flag football, on top of lacrosse, and these other sports that are being added to the Olympic movement.
Two events that would be one-offs. Do you feel confident in the next 5 to 7 years that Baltimore could host the NFL draft and a baseball all-star game?
I feel very confident that we can have the appropriate discussions to make that happen. If you asked me 10 years ago, I'd say we're probably still a little ways away. But now that we have programs, now that we have people starting to really understand the value of sports tourism, the value of these events on our economy, and the value of the exposure they bring, I think, and I feel very confident now that we will have the right access and the right opportunities to bring both of those events to this market, whether it'll be the next 5 years or whether we'll have a win and it might be 8 years out.
Okay, gotcha. How about the expansion of homegrown events? I imagine this is like what you were saying when you took something, Team Maryland helped take something from 200 teams to 700 teams. Tell us how that works.
Well, across the entire state, we have some event rights holders that call Maryland home. And our job is we want to make sure they continue to call Maryland home. So when they need tools, resources, or access that they might not have had in the past, our job is to figure out why and then help solve the problem so that they can get the access that they need. Classic example is a good friend at Elite Tournaments. We've been working with them since the first day I got here. Well, they were, kind of, in a position where they weren't able to take their soccer event over Memorial Day weekend from where they were at a couple hundred teams, and because they weren't getting access to surrounding county fields. So myself and members of my team tried to figure out what was the missing puzzle piece. We helped solve that. So now on Memorial Day weekend, that tournament is now hosting 650 plus teams each year because we've been able to create a gateway of access. Now, the relationship is obviously theirs to manage from here on out, but we help work behind the scenes to get them access. So the other thing in homegrown events, the Cycling Classic and Fair Hill are really homegrown events.
Yeah.
Even though we won the bid to host the 5-star, at the end of the day, we still had to put all the local entities and all the local pursuit. And now it's our event to lose.
Yeah.
The FBI is out there monitoring, making sure we live up to standards or whatever, but how we want to grow it, how we want to create the festival around it, and that's up to us. That's up to us to make it into something that way. Now, the Cycling Classic was 100% homegrown. We had a vision that cycling, we had a robust cycling community, heard a lot about, things going on in the cycling community and the like. And then we did the amateur roads out in, Hagerstown in 18 and 19. And USA Cycling just loved how we were doing things. And they said, you guys should put together some type of professional event and the like. And we did. We got bit by COVID for 2 years, but we came out of the gate strong and hosted two very high-profile cycling events. But again, at an event that we own an event that we created the ambiance around through community outreach and other festival components.
Just so our listeners or viewers hear this, you understand the playing field. Something like Lac Splash or the 650 team event, are you doing so strong there that it's beyond being penetrated by somebody coming in to somehow steal an event like that?
Well, the youth and amateur sports space is becoming even more competitive as we speak. You're watching big corporations like Harris Blitzer, and now their Unrivaled brand partnering with Ripken. You're seeing Step 3, who's buying up a lot of the lacrosse brand. So you're starting to see these big entities trying to absorb various events and create one business model, one working model, venue plus operators plus other aspects to keep it all within one family. And so we are seeing the unique challenge that every time we host an event and it gets successful, and is there someone watching us trying to figure out how we can make it?
Is, right?
So our job is to make sure that we have created enough trust and enough confidence in our ability to help them long-term and lasting in Maryland that they don't want to ever leave. So there's something about picking up and moving. It means you're going to have to learn a new place.
Yep.
You're going to have to put new investments, and do they have the resources, tools to help us? They might have great fields and the whole 9 yards, and that's part of it. But if you don't have the lodging and you don't have the restaurants and you don't have the people around you who say, yeah, we can get this done, fields are great. But if you don't have the surrounding supporting cast, then maybe not so great.
An example of the way that worked to Maryland's benefit is the CIAA tournament, which had been housed over in Richmond, right?
In Charlotte.
Yep. Charlotte.
Yeah, a classic example, certain events, out there in the marketplace will run their course, or they will grow exponentially, and then certain things become a part of the event that weren't intended to be part of the event, or they're recognized to be part of the event. And sometimes, an event owner has to take it in their interest, saying, in order for us to get our arms back around this opportunity, we might have to look at a new spot. And who is out there interested in engaging with us in the conversation? We did it in Charlotte. We went down there and presented to the presidents of the CIAA in the conference. And here you go. Tournaments happening here in Baltimore. The experience is really great. The economics of it are rising. The room nights are being generated. They're having a great experience here, talking about our can-do attitude and what's really important about that resonates beyond the CIAA. Others start hearing about our can-do and our delivery aspect, and then they come knocking at the door. So we have some things right now in the queue are starting to land in our backyard, or being, they are broaching us because they hear about our reputation, that we have a can-do attitude. Maryland and the state and the city and our county partners are behind these efforts, and so they're like, one seamless flow of how we get things done in Maryland is winning the day for us in a lot of opportunities.
Before I go on with a couple of these bullet points, Governor Moore, you've worked for Democratic governor and O'Malley, Republican Governor Hogan. Now you're with Wes Moore. Have you had many interactions that tell you something about how much he's behind these efforts?
Well, I can tell you right now, Governor Moore has been a great fan of ours. His team has been nothing but supportive. The chairman of the Stadium Authority, Craig Thompson, has been nothing but a champion, out there. So I have been very blessed in my career here in Maryland that
You've had
all three administrations have understood our value, understand our impact opportunities, and understand that they each have a little bit of niche of how they're approaching it a little bit differently.
Yep.
And that's cool. Like I said, under O'Malley, we got started and got our legs underneath us. Governor Hogan and his team did a really nice job giving us some bandwidth and helping us create some legislation that helped really support us.
Mm-hmm.
And now Governor Moore is giving us that, energy and that enthusiasm to help communities that we might not have been able to, get through to date, and also put great people in a part of our equation that allow us to keep driving this thing forward, so that we can pursue things like the NFL draft and those other opportunities. And you're seeing this summer, we have 4 international soccer friends, 3 known right now, 1 to be announced next week, coming into market. The PLL, landed here in market with the Whip Snakes, and then some of their grassroots initiatives. So you're starting to see the momentum, because of energy and positivity, is starting to also corral people wanting to be in Maryland.
One of the other bullet points was the attempt by Team Maryland to increase overnight hotel stays. I'm imagining that's just by simply expanding the existent base of events.
Yeah, I mean, the basic, I use a phrase: heads and beds, food and belly, gas and cars, credit card and cash counters, and butts and seats are really the measurement components of how we do the economic value. So the more people that you come into market, and hopefully more people that are coming outside of the 50, I use the state border is really my measuring stick. But anybody's come beyond 50 miles or whatever to participate in a multi-day event, most likely it's going to be picking up a room night. Our goal is to try to give them reasons why that's the better investment than to drive them back and forth. And so our goal is always to increase room nights. But our main priority is to make sure they come and have a world-class experience in the state of Maryland. And then when they do leave our market, they go somewhere and talk about it and say, you need to go to Maryland because they do it right, they do it well, and they're committed to the opportunities and the investment. That's more important than the economics. The economics will come, but our reputation out in the markets,
the reputation is the trust that come together. I guess here's the other one. There's another bullet point: increasing the use of local business restaurants. How do you do that? Do you build that in your marketing presentations that bring the teams here and all that and the events?
Yeah, we're always talking about the foodie culture in Maryland. I mean, obviously we're synonymous with crab cakes. People want to say we're lacrosse, crab cakes, and whatever, and that's who we are. I mean, you can put that together with so many different cuisines that are out there. We have some of the best restaurants and the like, so we do emphasize it. But that's where our DMO partner comes in. We can help on the sports and the expertise and the knowledge base on the sports side. But again, at the end of the day, the local has to help us build that vibe around an event, because, if I ate at every restaurant or everything that we talk about in our proposal and like, one, I wouldn't fit in this room probably. and then two, you probably wouldn't recognize me as the sports guy of the state, because you're like, would probably see wrinkles and things in places that you don't want to see that. But at the end of the day, it's all about the total package, but with a can-do and a team mentality. That's why we are accomplishing what we're accomplishing here in the state of Maryland through sport tourism, because we're sticking together like a team. I was just at a conference out in Portland, and we had some of our partners that were with us. We sold the state. We sold partners that weren't present. We talked to rights holders that might not, and some of our partners might not be their bailiwick, but they represented someone who wasn't there. And it's awesome when you can be someone from Howard County, for example, and you're talking about Wycomico County, and because you're part of the team and they couldn't be present that week, that stuff starts to resonate. And same thing with Anne Arundel County to Baltimore, and Baltimore out to Howard County, to Prince George County, to Montgomery County, all the way out to Garrett and Allegheny. So as you say, east to west, north to south, we cover it all, but it's because we're a team.
Tell me what direct economic impact really means in terms of what comes in, the dollars that come in. What is considered direct economic impact?
It's where the first dollar is ever spent. Not about where it went after that, not where it happened to be. Direct impact is the exact dollars that were recouped on the first initial spend of an opportunity. So that when you check into the hotel, that's the first spend. When you register for the tournament through our system, first spend. When you eat at the restaurant, that's your first spend. So that's all the
car rentals.
When you do that the first time, we don't take into account where that dollar goes after the fact. That secondary, tertiary spend, all that stuff that you see in economic impact studies. Now, we monitor that, but at the end of the day, we look at what was spent by the event owner, what was spent by the visitor while they were here on that first direct spend, and then that's the core nucleus of economics before it goes off into calculators and taxations and all that stuff.
How is that calculated? In other words,
right up here. It's up here. No, we did an analysis several years back with Crossroads, our economist of record, to create a formula that shows you bring in so many people, the percentages of X, Y, and Z, and so on. Will get you a baseline of what your direct spend is. And then that's the baseline that economists will take then to put it into an economic impact report, because then they'll show you how that dollar trickled beyond the restaurant, how it made it into an employment center, how it made it into taxation and the like. So, like I said, we want to talk about the initial dollar, not where it turned in 3 times over.
All right, just a couple more things. And I imagine this is part of the trust and the confidence people have, is destination awareness. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's really awesome. I mean, when we go to these various conferences and trade shows, and even with rights holders, when Maryland is present, they know it. Our brand, for Maryland sports, as well as Team Maryland, as well as the Maryland flag, are now, they're out there. Everybody knows it. I mean, we have one of the most prominent flags in the United States. And when I go to Europe on various trips for international business and the like, even over there, they recognize where our flag is, and they say Maryland versus Maryland. But we have done a really good job about positioning the state of Maryland domestically and abroad as being a leader in the sport tourism space. And because of that, not only have I been able to be fortunate to serve in leadership roles nationally, I now serve on an international board that is, has me, in Asia, has me in South America, Africa, and all the continents, minus one maybe. It's a little cold there. Having a reputation of how Maryland is, working at space, how Maryland is collaborating, how Maryland is bringing business and sports together.
Got one more bullet point and then a question, different question. Social media followers. I'm imagining that is something you watch carefully because after an event, you probably get an uptick on people following any social media aspects of Team Maryland.
Yeah, so obviously part of the growth today in today's market is where are you putting your brand, where are you putting your identity, and who you're backing and supporting, and like. And social media is at the forefront, of that. It's still one of those unique anomalies in the whole system. It's like, what's good measurement, what's not good measurement, what are the right click-throughs, what are the X, Y, Zs. But at the end of the day, it's another medium for us to brag and boast about what the state's doing, what our partners are doing, and the events that are under our portfolio, and tagging all that stuff. So it's cool now, you know it better than I do as you work for a media company, is that tagging the various entities or the various things, and then it gets into another sphere of spin, and next thing you know, you're totally away from the event you're even talking about because you used the word grateful or used the word whatever as one of your tags, and now it's in another sphere getting tens of thousands of hits and likes, and you're like going, from who? So, but it's great, and it has its battles too, because sometimes you try to keep something under lock and key for a little bit, and because of social media, people can be in meetings and click it right out there before you have a chance to come out on your own.
Hey, before I let you go today, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we're just around the Kentucky Derby as we record this. Within 2 weeks, we'll have the Preakness at Pimlico. We won't get a chance to talk about it until afterwards on our next podcast. Yep. Is this the last Preakness at Pimlico before something's going to take place? I'm not asking you the whole grand plan, but or do we not know there might be another Preakness at Pimlico before something happens?
I thought this might be a question, and I'm going to have to play naive because I, too, should know.
Okay.
But I needed to dive deeper into some of the reports and how some of the legislation was passed. So it's either this year or next year is the last year at Pimlico before we go to Laurel for 2 years while the work happens. But I don't know when all that triggers, and I don't want to speak for the Thoroughbred Racing Group and MSA on that one, because I do know there's factors at play that could determine whether this is or next. But I would envision if this were the last, there'd be a little different hoopla going on than there is. This year's got a good buzz, but I'm not hearing a lot of talk about last opportunity, blah, 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 before you see the net new. So I think it's one more year.
And I want to be clear, eventually the Preakness will be coming back to Pimlico.
100%.
100%. Appreciate your time as always. This is your podcast. It is Drawing a Crowd, the Business of Sports Tourism podcast presented by the Maryland Sports Commission and Pressbox Sports, featuring him, Terry Hasseltine, the Executive Director of Maryland Sports Commission. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Dan. Great conversation.